Olivia Grant sat quietly in her first-class seat, reviewing her notes on the upcoming business summit. The hum of the jet engines filled the background as she adjusted her navy blazer and set her briefcase neatly at her feet. She was on her way to an international conference to discuss advancements in aviation technology, a field she had been passionate about for years. Despite the excitement of the event, her calm demeanor was evident, as Olivia preferred to maintain control, even in unpredictable situations. As she settled in, the flight attendant, Megan, approached her, a clipboard in hand. Megan's expression was slightly uneasy, and she hesitated before speaking. "Excuse me, Ms. Grant, but I'm afraid there's been a mistake with your booking. We need you to move to a seat in the economy section." Olivia raised an eyebrow, her surprise momentarily breaking her composed facade. She glanced down at her boarding pass, which clearly indicated her first-class seat. "I'm sorry, but this seat is assigned to me." "There must be some mistake," she replied, her voice steady but firm. Megan, appearing flustered, glanced down at the clipboard, scanning Olivia's information once more. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion," Megan stammered. "Your ticket was not marked for first class. We'll need you to relocate." Though she was taken aback by the request, Olivia didn't lose her composure. She had faced booking issues before, but this seemed different. It wasn't just a simple error, it felt as though Megan was making an assumption about her entitlement to the seat. Olivia knew that her presence in first class should have been clear to the flight crew, but she decided to handle the situation without confrontation. "I understand mistakes happen, but I'd appreciate it if you could double-check." "I'm certain this is my seat." Megan nodded awkwardly, retreating to double-check the details. Olivia remained still, her mind already focused on the implications of this mistake. She had been in this industry for years and knew firsthand the importance of treating passengers with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. The awkwardness of the situation weighed heavily on her, but she resolved not to let it escalate. She remained calm, knowing she would soon have the situation clarified, but the uncertainty of the moment lingered. Olivia sat back in her seat, her mind racing as she waited for Megan to return. The surrounding passengers, all seemingly unaware of the growing tension, continued to settle into their own spaces. Olivia, ever the professional, tried to focus on the upcoming conference. She needed to remain calm and composed, her reputation depended on it. But the situation kept gnawing at her. Why had Megan assumed that she didn't belong in first class? It was a troubling thought that wouldn't leave her mind. A few minutes later, Megan returned, her steps slower and more hesitant. She held Olivia's boarding pass in her hands, this time with a more serious expression. "Ms. Grant, I'm terribly sorry for the confusion earlier. It seems there's no mistake. Your booking was indeed for first class, but there was an oversight in our system. I've confirmed it with the crew, and everything is in order. Again, I apologize for the misunderstanding." Olivia took the boarding pass from Megan, her lips pressed in a thin line as she processed the apology. Though Megan was no longer asking her to move, Olivia could sense that something deeper was at play. This wasn't just about a booking error, there was an underlying assumption about Olivia's place in first class. The moment had passed, but the implications lingered. "Thank you," Olivia replied coolly, accepting the apology with grace. She returned her attention to her briefcase, signaling that the conversation was over. The words were polite, but there was an edge to them that Megan likely sensed. She had been a part of this error, and Olivia wasn't about to let it slide without recognizing the underlying issue. Megan left with a soft nod, and Olivia watched her retreat, still feeling unsettled. It wasn't just about the mistake, it was about how easily it had been made, how assumptions had influenced the flight attendant's actions. The experience had been minor in terms of its direct impact, but Olivia knew this moment would stick with her. She would address it, and it would shape the way she moved forward in her efforts to bring more inclusivity and respect to the airline industry. Hours passed as the plane cruised at 30,000 feet, but Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside her. The more she thought about the incident with Megan, the more she realized how critical the situation had been. The error in booking could have been a simple mistake, but the way Megan had acted suggested something deeper, an unconscious bias, perhaps. Olivia wasn't new to these types of issues, and as an influential figure in the aviation industry, she had seen how bias could infiltrate customer service, even when people didn't intend for it to happen. As she looked out the window at the sprawling landscape below, Olivia reflected on her long journey in the industry. She had worked hard to build her reputation as a strong, fair, and effective leader. She had spent years cultivating relationships with key figures in aviation, promoting innovation and technology, and ensuring that her airline was seen as a leader in safety and efficiency. But this incident made her realize that there was still work to be done, work that she could no longer ignore. By the time the flight had descended and the plane touched down at their destination, Olivia knew what she had to do. This wasn't just about her individual experience, it was about the passengers who, like her, had faced the same kind of bias or oversight. The industry needed a wake-up call, and it needed to come from someone who had the power to instigate real change. She had already decided to take action. Olivia knew the best way to bring about change was through visibility and leadership. She began drafting a speech, not for the conference she had initially come for, but for a larger conversation about inclusivity in the aviation industry. She wanted to take her personal experience and turn it into something that could be shared with others, something that would encourage her peers and colleagues to rethink how they interacted with passengers. At the conference, Olivia stood before an audience of influential industry leaders. Instead of diving straight into her planned presentation on technological advancements, she began by sharing her recent experience on the flight. She spoke candidly about the assumption made by the flight attendant and how it had made her feel. It wasn't just about her, it was about how every passenger deserved respect, regardless of appearance or social status. Olivia's voice was steady but filled with passion as she discussed the need for change within the industry. We, as leaders in this industry, need to do better. We need to ensure that every passenger, no matter their background, is treated with the respect they deserve. This isn't just about customer service, it's about ensuring that our policies and our actions reflect the values of fairness and inclusivity. The room was silent as Olivia spoke, the weight of her words hanging in the air. When she finished, there was a moment of stillness before the applause began. Olivia had made her point, it was time for the aviation industry to address the biases that were often overlooked. This moment was not just about an individual incident, it was about changing the culture of the entire industry, one step at a time. By speaking out, Olivia had turned a small misunderstanding into a larger, more powerful conversation. She wasn't just advocating for herself, she was advocating for all passengers who had ever felt overlooked or judged. Olivia's willingness to confront the issue head-on was a turning point, and it set the stage for the changes that would soon follow in the airline industry. Her commitment to creating a more inclusive and respectful environment began to ripple through the conference, sparking discussions that would continue long after the event. For Olivia, this was just the beginning. She had always prided herself on being a leader, and now she was taking her leadership to new heights, advocating for fairness and equity in every corner of the industry. This was her moment to make a lasting impact, and she was determined to see it through. After Olivia Grant's bold speech at the industry conference, the ripples of change began to spread. Her words struck a chord with many, particularly those who had spent years within the aviation industry, often unnoticed for their subtle but impactful biases. Olivia knew the conversation had only just begun, but it was a crucial first step. Back at her office, Olivia could feel the pressure of leading the charge for change. The airline was facing a delicate moment in its history. While many in the industry had applauded her efforts, there were still voices of dissent. Change was always met with resistance, especially when it threatened long-standing practices that many employees had grown accustomed to. Olivia knew the next few months would be crucial for ensuring that the company's shift toward inclusivity and respect wasn't just a temporary wave but a sustainable, long-term change. Internally, the leadership team was supportive, but Olivia needed more than just lip service. She needed a solid plan for action, one that would be executed at every level of the company. She sat down with her senior management team to outline the steps ahead. They agreed on launching an intensive, company-wide training program focused on diversity, unconscious bias, and customer service excellence. The first step was to make it clear to everyone in the organization that these issues were not optional or secondary, they were fundamental to how the airline would operate moving forward. Olivia's vision extended beyond just the staff. She realized the company's policies and systems would need to be reviewed to ensure that inclusivity was embedded at every touchpoint, from how passengers were greeted at the airport to how flight attendants interacted with them during their journey. It wasn't just about making a single change, it was about transforming the entire passenger experience. One of Olivia's key decisions was to hold an open forum with employees across all departments. She wanted them to understand the importance of these changes, not just from a top-down directive but through active participation. The forum was to be a space where employees could share their concerns, ask questions, and engage directly with Olivia about the steps forward. As the days went by, the public response to Olivia's speech continued to pour in. Social media was abuzz, with passengers and industry insiders alike commenting on her transparency and boldness. The hashtag #RespectInTheSkies began trending, and news outlets began to cover the story in more detail. Olivia knew the next step was crucial, she needed to keep the momentum going without overpromising. Action spoke louder than words, and she was determined to back up her claims with measurable change. To ensure accountability, Olivia directed her team to set clear, transparent goals for the coming year. These included improving the airline's diversity metrics, increasing employee satisfaction scores, and implementing a robust feedback system for passengers to voice their experiences. For the first time, passengers would have a direct line of communication with the airline about their experiences, allowing the company to not only address concerns but also measure the success of its initiatives. Olivia understood that the real work would take place behind the scenes. Changing culture wasn't something that happened overnight. She wasn't interested in superficial improvements, she was committed to creating an environment where employees genuinely understood the value of inclusivity. She spent hours each week reviewing training materials, attending leadership workshops, and meeting with consultants on best practices for diversity and equity. She knew that the success of this initiative would hinge on how deeply these principles were embedded within the airline's operations. But Olivia's work wasn't just about leading a company, it was about leading a movement. She recognized that her position gave her the opportunity to influence not just her airline but the entire aviation industry. She was starting to see her influence extend beyond the company as well. Other airlines began to reach out, asking how they could implement similar strategies to improve customer service and inclusivity. However, not everyone in the company was on board. As expected, some employees, particularly those who had been with the airline for years, resisted the changes. They argued that the company had always done well without needing to focus on soft issues like inclusivity. These employees, though in the minority, made their voices heard through anonymous feedback channels, expressing skepticism about the new direction. Olivia knew that resistance was inevitable, but she also knew that it was a sign that they were headed in the right direction. The road to change was rarely smooth, and she was prepared to face the challenges that came with it. The success of her leadership, she realized, would be defined not by the applause or criticism she received, but by her ability to lead the company through the storm, to ensure that every employee, from the newest recruit to the most seasoned manager, understood the importance of respect and inclusivity in the airline industry. As the weeks passed, the initial excitement surrounding Olivia Grant's speech began to settle. The response from the media and passengers was overwhelmingly positive, but the true challenge was starting to emerge within the company. Not all of her employees shared the same enthusiasm for the sweeping changes Olivia was championing. The employees who resisted the new direction of the airline made their frustrations known, and the feedback became a cause for concern. Olivia knew that to succeed in her vision of a more inclusive and respectful airline, she would need to tackle these concerns head-on. She wasn't afraid of resistance, in fact, she welcomed it. But she also understood the importance of addressing dissent within the organization. Discontent, when left unchecked, could fester and lead to divisions that would ultimately derail her goals. The first step in addressing the resistance was to listen. Olivia set up private meetings with key employees, those who had been vocal about their opposition, and asked them for their honest feedback. She wanted to understand the root of their concerns, whether they were ideological or based on fear of change. One of the most common concerns was the perceived softness of the inclusivity initiatives. Longtime employees who had worked for the airline for decades argued that customer service had always been about getting the job done efficiently, and now they felt as though they were being forced to focus on issues that, in their view, didn't affect the bottom line. These employees had been trained in a different era, where professionalism was defined by efficiency and a more rigid hierarchy. Olivia knew that changing this mindset would take time, but she was undeterred. She emphasized that the company's success wasn't just about efficiency, it was about creating a holistic customer experience that went beyond the transaction. Customers today want more than just a flight, they want to feel valued and respected, Olivia told one of the senior managers during their meeting. If we want to lead this industry, we have to be more than just the best at logistics. We need to be the best at treating people well. The resistance didn't just come from frontline employees, it also came from some middle managers who had built their careers on traditional metrics of success. These managers weren't sure how to measure the success of initiatives like diversity training and customer service improvements. Olivia understood that part of leadership meant showing people how to measure success in new ways, which was why she pushed for clear, tangible outcomes. By setting specific goals related to inclusivity, such as improving diversity in leadership positions and increasing positive customer feedback on employee interactions, Olivia helped frame the discussion in terms that made sense to those who were more metrics-driven. Despite the resistance, Olivia noticed a shift. Slowly but surely, the employees who had been most skeptical started to come around. They began to see the benefits of the changes, not just in terms of customer satisfaction but in the way it positively impacted the company culture. Employees started to feel more valued, and the team began to work more cohesively. In addition to addressing internal resistance, Olivia also worked with her communications team to ensure that the airline's new direction was clearly communicated to the public. She knew that transparency would be key in maintaining trust with passengers. Olivia authorized the release of detailed progress reports, showcasing how the airline was meeting its inclusivity goals. She also made herself available for media interviews, continually emphasizing that the airline was committed to making real, lasting change. It wasn't long before Olivia began to see the fruits of her labor. Customer feedback became more positive, especially regarding the quality of interactions with employees. Passengers reported feeling more respected and appreciated, and employee satisfaction scores began to climb. The airline's internal culture was improving, and employees were taking more pride in their work, knowing that they were contributing to a company that genuinely valued its people. However, Olivia knew this was only the beginning. The journey toward a fully inclusive and respectful culture would take years, and she was committed to seeing it through. She wasn't just leading a company, she was leading a movement that would change the way the entire aviation industry approached customer service and inclusivity. Olivia had proven that true leadership wasn't about making the easy decisions, it was about tackling the hard issues head-on and ensuring that everyone, from employees to passengers, felt respected and valued. As Olivia Grant continued to navigate the challenges of leading her airline through a transformative period, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The journey had been difficult, but every step had brought her closer to the vision she had set for the company, a vision of respect, inclusivity, and fairness. The past few months had been filled with both triumphs and setbacks, but Olivia remained resolute in her mission. One of the most rewarding aspects of this journey had been the deepening of her relationship with her employees. Though the resistance to change had been palpable at first, Olivia had learned that the key to winning over her critics was listening. By understanding their concerns and offering tangible solutions, she had not only secured their buy-in but had also empowered them to become champions of change themselves. She often reflected on the conversations she had had with longtime employees, who, at first, had viewed the company's new direction with skepticism. Over time, these employees began to see the benefits of the inclusivity initiatives, not just for the passengers but for themselves as well. The company's new training programs, which focused on unconscious bias and improving customer service, were proving to be effective. Employees were becoming more aware of how their interactions with passengers could shape their experience, and they were responding by being more attentive and empathetic. The change wasn't immediate, but the improvements were undeniable. Complaints from passengers about poor service were steadily declining, and positive feedback about the airline staff was on the rise. Olivia was particularly proud of the new employee feedback system she had implemented. Employees now had a direct line of communication with upper management, allowing them to voice concerns or share ideas for improvement. This open communication was essential for creating a culture of transparency and trust. Olivia knew that the key to a successful transformation wasn't just about top-down mandates, it was about creating an environment where everyone felt heard and valued. Externally, the public's perception of the airline was improving as well. Olivia had taken the bold step of addressing the company's shortcomings head-on, and that transparency had earned her the respect of many industry leaders. Competitors were beginning to take note of the changes Olivia had made, and some were even reaching out for advice on how to implement similar programs in their own organizations. Olivia had always believed that true leadership was about setting an example, and it seemed that her efforts were now influencing the wider industry. Despite the progress, Olivia knew that the road ahead was long. Cultural shifts didn't happen overnight, and the airline's commitment to inclusivity and respect would need to be maintained in the years to come. Olivia was prepared for the long haul, understanding that transformation was a constant process, one that required dedication, persistence, and unwavering leadership. As the months passed, Olivia's confidence in her vision grew. She was more determined than ever to ensure that her airline would not only be successful but would also stand as a beacon of respect and inclusivity in the aviation industry. The changes she had initiated had already made a significant impact, but Olivia knew that the work was far from over. With each passing day, Olivia's leadership was reshaping the company, and she was laying the foundation for a future where passengers, employees, and the industry at large could experience the transformative power of respect. As Olivia looked out over the horizon of the company's future, she knew one thing for certain: the best was yet to come. After Olivia Grant's public speech and the subsequent changes she spearheaded, the transformation of her airline was well underway. However, the true test of her leadership would be measured not by the initial success of her initiatives but by their long-term sustainability. Olivia was committed to ensuring that the cultural shift within the company wasn't just temporary, it had to be an integral part of the company's DNA, shaping its practices, policies, and every interaction with passengers. The first major step was integrating inclusivity and respect into the company's daily operations. Olivia and her leadership team worked tirelessly to revise the training program. While many employees had participated in basic customer service training, the new courses would focus on unconscious bias, empathy, and proactive communication with passengers. Olivia was insistent that the training would go beyond standard procedures. It had to be a transformative experience, allowing employees to reflect on their own biases and how they could overcome them in a professional setting. Respect is not a buzzword, Olivia often said. It's the foundation of everything we do. It's the cornerstone of every interaction, whether it's a greeting at the counter or helping a family settle into their seat. This philosophy became the guiding principle for every department within the airline. In the first few months of implementing these changes, Olivia watched as the training sessions unfolded. At first, there was some resistance, especially from older employees who had been with the company for years and were used to a more traditional, efficiency-based approach to customer service. However, Olivia knew that lasting change would take time and that the focus should remain on fostering understanding and empathy, not simply compliance. One of the first signs that the program was making a difference was the increase in engagement during employee meetings. Those who had initially resisted began to speak up, sharing their experiences with bias and acknowledging the challenges they had faced. The discussions were candid and sometimes uncomfortable, but they were also constructive. Olivia made it clear that there was no room for defensiveness, everyone had a part to play in creating a better environment, and their voices were essential. By the end of the first quarter of the new initiatives, customer satisfaction scores began to show notable improvements. Passengers were commenting not only on the efficiency of their service but also on the attitude of the staff. Many noted that they felt genuinely cared for and respected, a feeling that had been lacking in the past. For Olivia, these small victories were significant. They proved that her vision for the airline was not only achievable but also impactful. As the company's culture continued to evolve, Olivia realized that true inclusivity had to go beyond customer-facing policies. She started looking inward at the airline's hiring practices and leadership diversity. She wanted to ensure that the company's workforce truly reflected the diverse world in which it operated. To make this happen, Olivia worked with her HR team to refine recruitment strategies, focusing on attracting candidates from a variety of backgrounds. Diversity wasn't just about checking boxes, it was about bringing in perspectives that would enrich the airline and its culture. Additionally, Olivia introduced mentorship programs to help underrepresented employees rise through the ranks. She wanted to ensure that those who had the drive and potential to lead could do so, regardless of their background. These programs became vital for employee retention, as staff members felt that the airline was genuinely invested in their personal and professional growth. As the months passed, Olivia began to see the early signs of a cultural shift. The company's leadership team was becoming more diverse, employees were engaged in meaningful conversations about inclusivity, and customers were responding positively to the changes. The progress was gradual, but Olivia was certain that the airline was on the right path. The company's internal culture was beginning to reflect the values Olivia had championed: respect, empathy, and inclusivity. However, Olivia knew that sustaining this culture required continuous effort. She couldn't afford to let complacency set in. With each success came new challenges, and Olivia remained focused on the long-term goal of ensuring that her airline remained a leader in creating an inclusive and respectful environment for both its employees and customers. As Olivia Grant's airline continued to evolve, her focus expanded beyond her own company to the broader aviation industry. Her commitment to inclusivity and respect wasn't just about transforming her own organization, she wanted to spark a larger movement. The challenges she faced with internal resistance and the broader industry's reluctance to change were not lost on her. She understood that systemic shifts didn't happen overnight, but she was determined to make an impact on the wider aviation sector. Olivia knew that real change would require collaboration. While her company was making strides, other airlines were lagging behind in terms of inclusivity, especially in the areas of employee treatment, customer service, and leadership diversity. Olivia took it upon herself to advocate for these changes at industry conferences and through private meetings with other executives. At one such conference, Olivia delivered another speech, this time aimed at industry leaders. "We can't be complacent," she urged the audience. "We must take accountability for the environment we create, not just for our passengers but for our employees. If we want to improve service quality and customer loyalty, we must first address the biases that exist within our own organizations." Her speech was met with mixed reactions. Some industry leaders nodded in agreement, while others seemed dismissive, comfortable with the status quo. Olivia had expected this. She understood that change was difficult for many, especially when it required them to question long-established practices. But she was undeterred. She knew that the long-term success of the industry hinged on its ability to adapt to the changing expectations of both employees and passengers. Over the next several months, Olivia reached out to fellow CEOs and executives to discuss these issues. She advocated for more inclusive hiring practices, mandatory diversity training, and better systems for measuring employee satisfaction. While some executives were resistant, others were eager to learn from Olivia's experiences. They saw the tangible benefits her airline had already begun to experience, and they were open to exploring similar initiatives. As Olivia's influence grew within the industry, she started to see small changes at other airlines. Some companies began to adopt similar training programs for their employees, while others revised their recruitment strategies to be more inclusive. While these changes were incremental, they were a step in the right direction. One of the most significant shifts came when Olivia was invited to sit on a diversity and inclusion advisory board for the International Air Transport Association, IATA. This was a major victory for her, as it provided a platform to influence the global aviation industry on a much larger scale. Olivia saw this as an opportunity to push for policies that would require airlines to take responsibility for creating inclusive environments. Her goal was to make inclusivity a standard practice within the industry, not a fringe initiative. Despite the progress, Olivia knew there was still much work to be done. Many airlines continued to resist change, and the industry as a whole was still struggling with biases, both conscious and unconscious, that affected passenger experiences. However, Olivia remained hopeful. She had already proven that change was possible within her own airline, and she was determined to continue advocating for broader reform across the entire sector. The road ahead would be long, but Olivia's resolve was unwavering. She had already shown that leadership could drive cultural transformation within a company, and now she was working tirelessly to extend that impact across the aviation industry. Olivia believed that by working together, airlines could create an environment where respect, inclusivity, and fairness were not just goals, but the foundation of the industry's future. Months turned into years, and Olivia Grant continued to lead her airline through a period of profound transformation. The company had become a model of inclusivity and respect within the aviation industry, and Olivia's leadership had not only reshaped her airline but had also contributed to a wider shift in industry norms. But as the journey progressed, Olivia found herself reflecting on the challenges, successes, and lessons learned along the way. Looking back, Olivia couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. The cultural transformation within the company was evident in the way employees interacted with passengers, in the diversity of the leadership team, and in the way the company was viewed by the public. Customer satisfaction had never been higher, and employee retention was at an all-time peak. Employees no longer viewed diversity training as a chore but as an opportunity to enhance their skills and provide better service to passengers. The airline had achieved what Olivia had always hoped for, a company where respect, empathy, and inclusivity were embedded in every facet of its operations. But Olivia was the first to admit that the work was far from over. The airline was a better version of itself, but there were always new challenges to face, new issues to address, and new ways to improve. This was the reality of leadership, it was a constant journey of growth. As Olivia looked out of her office window one evening, she thought about the many conversations she had had with employees, customers, and industry leaders over the years. She had seen firsthand how change could take root and how powerful it could be. But she also knew that change wasn't just about policies or programs, it was about people. It was about changing hearts and minds, not just systems. The impact Olivia had made within her company and the industry was undeniable, but she understood that leadership wasn't about achieving perfection, it was about progress. She had started with a simple belief, that every person deserved to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background. This belief had guided her through the toughest moments, and it would continue to be her compass moving forward. As Olivia prepared for the next phase of her journey, she remained deeply committed to the values that had driven her success. The airline had become a symbol of what was possible when leadership was rooted in respect and inclusivity, and Olivia was determined to ensure that this vision would continue to shape the future of the industry for years to come. As Olivia Grant stood at the helm of her airline, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. What began as a personal mission to address an internal issue had blossomed into a transformative movement, not only for her company but for the broader aviation industry. The changes she had implemented in her airline had already shown positive results, but Olivia knew that the true test of her success would be in how the company sustained these changes in the years to come. The road to inclusivity and respect within the airline had not been easy. There had been resistance, challenges, and moments of doubt, but Olivia remained committed to her vision. The initiative she had launched was now more than just a series of policies, it was a core part of the company's identity. The culture within the airline had evolved to prioritize not only efficiency and safety but also empathy, respect, and inclusivity in every interaction with passengers. Olivia had already seen tangible results from the transformation. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high, and the airline's customer satisfaction scores had significantly improved. Passengers who once viewed the company as just another service provider now felt a connection to the airline. They knew they were treated with dignity and respect, no matter who they were. Yet, Olivia was keenly aware that her work was far from over. True transformation was ongoing, and sustaining it required constant effort and adaptation. She began to focus on long-term strategies that would ensure her company remained a leader in inclusivity and respect within the industry. One of her key focuses moving forward was mentorship. Olivia believed that fostering leadership at every level of the company was crucial to maintaining the cultural changes she had introduced. By mentoring the next generation of leaders, Olivia ensured that the principles of empathy and inclusivity would continue to be passed down long after her time in charge. Additionally, Olivia continued to engage with industry leaders, advocating for broader change across the aviation sector. She used her position to push for policies that promoted diversity in hiring and leadership, pushing for the adoption of inclusive practices across the industry. Her influence was growing, and she saw opportunities to reshape the aviation landscape on a much larger scale. Looking to the future, Olivia remained as committed as ever to her vision. She had built something meaningful, but she understood that the work would never be finished. The company, and the industry, needed constant attention and refinement. Olivia had proven that when a company embraced respect and inclusivity as core values, it could change not only its culture but also the very way the industry operated. As she prepared for the next chapter in her leadership journey, Olivia was filled with pride, not for what she had already accomplished, but for the work still ahead. She knew that the future of aviation would be shaped by leaders who valued people above all else, and she was determined to ensure her airline would remain at the forefront of that change.